There's currently like 3,000 players in the NCAA transfer portal, and I wish I was joking, but over half of D1 players are in the transfer portal. Here on Mountaineer Moment in this episode, we're going to give you 3 names to monitor for the Mountaineers as they might be targeting these guys. I know at least one of them is coming for a visit. Big names, big pieces, lots to be excited about. We're going to break it down here on this episode of Mountaineer Moment. Stick around. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mountaineer Moment, episode 184. My name's Troy. This is your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. And before we go any further, man, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button on this channel, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify or Amazon Music. Hit that subscribe button and help me help you grow this channel and obviously keep you up to date and in the know and in the news when we have new, in this case right now, new portal information coming your way. So hit that subscribe button and we'll keep doing our thing, plugging away as much as we can, keeping you in the know with the NCAA transfer portal in West Virginia and what's going on. Most recent episode, we talked about 2 Mountaineers that are entering into the transfer portal, Jaden Forsyth and DJ Thomas. DJ Thomas, that one's coming as a little bit of an ouch and a little bit of a surprise. And we're not going to full-on discuss that because we just did that, so you can go and watch that episode, the one previous to this one, talking about DJ Thomas and my thoughts on that situation. But what we do know now is with Thomas and Forsyth in the portal, you're freeing yourself up now to have to go and get more guys in the NCAA transfer portal. And there's already a lot of needs that you had. Keep in mind, West Virginia's entire starting 5, all transfers, all seniors. There's 6-man Chance Moore, senior. There's a lot of pieces you need to add to this roster. We know there's excitement. Freshmen coming in, Miles Sadler, who just won the Chipotle Nationals MVP, did an episode on that earlier this week. Check that one out too. But there's still a lot of work to be done. You need to go and get guys out of the portal that are going to contribute to winning basketball in Morgantown. And hate to say it, right? Because, well, you hate to relive what these last few years have looked like as far as roster retention, really lack thereof. But West Virginia's back to the drawing board again. You got to go and get guys out of the portal. And I get that there's plenty of programs around the whole country in the very same situation. But what can year 1, year 2, from year 1 to year 2, Ross Hodge do in the portal to go and get guys that are going to contribute to winning? And I know we won some games. I know we just won the crown. But how can we win even more games in the 2026-2027 season? I've got a few names for you. And I know at least one of these guys, Javan Buchanan, Boise State transfers in the portal, is scheduled to go on a visit to Morgantown. So that would be great. All 3 of these guys. All 3 of these guys, I think, could be an asset in Morgantown and for Ross Hodge in year 2, and to go get these guys out of the portal. Now, there's lots of guys. There's lots of potentials. I could give you a very, very long list of potential players that West Virginia is talking to, seeking to bring in. Muhammad Silla from Georgia Tech, the big man, 6'10", averaged 9.5 and almost 7.5 rebounds as a freshman at Georgia Tech in 16 games. We did a full-on episode of him that dropped on Tuesday night. You can check that one out as well. So we're not even talking about him in this episode. Not really talking about a couple guys from Miami of Ohio, including Ian Elmer, who averaged 12 points and 6 boards. Finley Bizjack, who Mountaineer Paul Locked on West Virginia is really, really big on. 17 points, couple boards, couple assists a game at Butler. And but the 3 names that we are going to talk about in this order are going to be Jason Edwards of Providence, Javan Buchanan of Boise State, and then rounding it off with Kameron Taylor, who's in the portal out of UNC Asheville. But starting with Jason Edwards, report there is that he's going to need a waiver. Same goes for Buchanan. If I forget to mention that when we get to him, they're going to need a waiver. I think Edwards' situation, he played a year of JUCO ball, but his last 3 seasons he has spent at 3 different schools. In North Texas in 2023-24, you know the connection there. You know who was there then. His name's Ross Hodge. He's the head coach of Morgantown. There's a connection. He averaged 19 points a game at North Texas. In Vandy in 24-25, he averaged 17 a game. And then in 25-26 this past season at Providence, the 6'1 guard at Providence averaged 16.5 points, 3 assists, and 3 rebounds a game. So he is, if you haven't seen him play, you haven't watched his tape, you don't know much about him. I compared him to Taz Sherman, former Mountaineer, who was just a pure bucket getter. And that's what Jason Edwards gives you, right? For his career, he's only averaging, for a 6'1 guard, he's only averaging 1.8 assists per game, most recently 3 at Providence, which is a career high. But he's averaging, 17, 18 points a game for his career over the last 3 seasons, right? In 3 seasons, he's putting up almost 1,600 points. He's a bucket getter, and he can really fill it up. And again, obviously, there's a Ross Hodge connection. He has spent time coming off the bench and in the starting lineup over those 3 years. It's kind of interesting. A third of his games, even though he's averaging 17.5 points for his career, a third of his games, he's come off the bench. He's instant offense. He's a microwave. He can get really, really hot, but he can win you some games in that regard, and he can lose you some games in that regard if he goes, really cold. Some of his highlights from, this past season at Providence include putting up 25 on DePaul, 24 in a win against Xavier. He played against Florida, lost 90-78 back over a Thanksgiving break tournament. He scored 13 against Florida, scored 20 against Wisconsin, including 3 of 7 from downtown. Scored 28 early season against Virginia Tech. Again, 18 against Creighton, 17 against DePaul, 24 against Xavier, 25 against DePaul, 32 against Butler, with Finley Bizjack there. Those guys going head-to-head. A couple of Mountaineer targets here for the Mountaineers. So Bizjack put up 26 points in that head-to-head game between these two guys that are, I got my eye on as far as the portal is concerned. But last couple things with Edwards and with Buchanan as it applies, with this whole waiver situation, you like to think that they got if they're looking at bringing a guy in out of the portal who needs to get a waiver, you like to think they like their chances of that waiver getting cleared and them being eligible to play. Again, this is a different situation with these two guys because the guy that we've already talked about in a recent episode, Muhammad Silla, played only 16 games at Georgia Tech, and he was just a freshman. And so he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. These guys are trying to be eligible, and so there's a notable difference there. So Edwards out of Providence, been around the block, and would add a dimension for West Virginia that we haven't seen in a while, right? Honor Huff, certainly a guy that can fill it up. We saw that in the college basketball crown. We saw that at different points throughout the season. But this guy can do it in a little more variety of ways that you haven't seen. He can create for himself a little better than what we've seen in years past for Mountaineers. And again, you think to some of the hardest times for West Virginia this season, it was because they didn't have someone who could step up and put the ball in the basket. Potential for Jason Edwards to be a problem solver, not every single moment of every single game, but a problem solver in that regard at times in the upcoming season if he does end up landing in Morgantown. So something to keep an eye on for sure with him. Second player we want to talk about is Javan Buchanan, a 6'7" senior from Boise State who's in the portal. I think another JUCO route for him. Came off the bench in 24-25 with Boise and played really well, almost double figures, but then he elevated his game this past season with the Broncos, averaging 12.5 points, 5 boards, 1.5 assists, and almost a steal per game, while shooting 32% or so from three-point land on 3 attempts per game. So He's another one. He's one that is coming on a visit to Morgantown. And in the Mountain West Championship, he ended his career as a Boise State Bronco with 28 points and 13 rebounds. Just a monster performance for him. He's a guy that, I think that might have been his only double-double. It was his only double-double last season, but he had some games that were close. A rebounding threat. He had 18 and 6 against USC, 19 and 9 early in the season. He had 21 points against San Diego State in a triple overtime game. He had 23 points against Nevada. Knocked down 3 threes against Fresno State and route to 26 points. So he's a guy that, while he averages 12.5 per game, he's shown some capability to be very explosive. And one of the things you also like with him is, as we've already mentioned in portal conversations in previous episodes, West Virginia and Ross Hodge, man, they want to target guys with length, guys with size, and guys that, again, show some tendencies to be able to put the ball in the bucket in a variety of different ways. Buchanan, 6'7", 230, 5 rebounds per game. So you like the sound of that. You just do. And he's, again, reminder, a guy that will need a waiver, but he's coming on a visit to Morgantown. And so if you think about filling out this roster, and then again, there's a lot to fill out, a lot of pieces you need to add here via the transfer portal. One of the guys who we're hoping to get, and we're pretty confident, crystal balls on multiple different sites are saying he's coming to Morgantown, is the Bella Vista guy, Muhammad Silla, who spent the 1 year at Georgia Tech, again, played half the season. So you picture him in that starting lineup, a guy that's a double-double threat, started his career with like 5 straight double-doubles as a freshman. That don't happen, but it did with him. And then, he's 6'11". You add size with Buchanan. This thing's going to be built around Miles Sadler, who you're banking on being very, very good. Certainly some indications are that he's going to be very, very good. And then you got to, let's just say, again, now, one of these guys might come, both of these guys might come, neither of these guys might come. That's the transfer portal, baby. That's what we're talking about right here in early April, hours after the national championship concludes. There's lots of speculation, lots of things going on. But if, and I mean if, you get a 6'10" center with a very high ceiling and a high motor, you get Buchanan, who was coming off a season where he averaged 12.5 per game, and he's 6'7". You insert him, could be, not saying he's Chance Moore, right, kind of different, but could be a guy that comes off the bench, but could be a guy that's inserted into that starting lineup. He spent, he's done both at Boise State and had success doing it over the last 2 years, whether on the bench or in the starting lineup. And then you go and get some shooters, and you get some guys to build around Miles Sadler, and you add some more bench depth. I think one of the things that you want to target this year is more depth, because I expected West Virginia on paper heading into November when that season started last year to be deeper. Now, Jackson Fields and his injury, and Jaden Forsyth, who didn't play a lot, Morris Ugasuk, like those were a couple guys right there who, at least my thinking was those guys were going to see the floor quite a bit, and they did not. They just didn't, for one reason or another, whether it was an injury or a red shirt or weren't playing well enough when they did get in. And there might be a case for all three of those guys with, one of those answers. You can figure out who they are, what I was thinking when I said that. But because of those three that you thought might play and didn't, your bench shrunk, right? You had a starting 5, consistent all season, like that was your starting 5. You had DJ Thomas back up. The starting 5, all those guys are gone. You had DJ Thomas enters the transfer portal as a freshman. Amir Jenkins, not sure his story, but obviously missed the crown with the surgery he had. You have Chance Moore, senior, gone, 6-man, played really well at times. But that was it. What would West Virginia have looked like with more depth? And what could West Virginia look like if you get some of these pieces
you insert them into the starting lineup, and then again, you still have a roster to fill out, and you bring in some guys that are comfortable and okay with coming off the bench and being a spark plug. Whether it's Jason Edwards or Buchanan or both of them, depth is good. And if there's one thing, I've watched a lot of basketball in my life, if there's one thing I learned kind of in March Madness this season was some of the depth that these teams had that, allowed them to be so successful. Michigan, there was a different guy doing it every night. There was guys off the bench coming in and not just buying time, but being productive. Same with UConn, right? The depth of these teams was pretty noteworthy, and I think that would bode well for the Mountaineers. All right, last name we're going to talk about, Kameron Taylor. He's a little bit of a human highlight reel. If you've seen him, you should look up some of his highlights. He's a sophomore, 6'7" guard. Cam Taylor averaged 19 points, 5 boards, and 3 assists at UNC Asheville. He spent the previous season there too, where he came off the bench and averaged 9 points per game. So really elevated his game. Not a great shooter, just 28% from 3 on 4 attempts, but obviously can get it done around the rim and in a variety of different ways if you're going to average 19 points a game. Some quick things with him as far as what he was able to do, this season. He had several games in the 20s. He had a really impressive stretch middle of the season. January, he went 21, 24, 27, 22, 26, 27, 12, but then picked it back up with 25, 21, 22, and 19. He can really, really fill it up, and he really, really did for UNC Asheville, and he's just a sophomore. Again, length, versatility, you like that. West Virginia didn't have a 6'7" guy that can really, really fill it up. Kind of thought, whatever he is, 6'5", 6'6", Trayson Eaglestaff would do that, but that didn't pan out the way that we were all thinking. Let's just be honest. Kameron Taylor, certainly a different player from Trayson Eaglestaff as far as what they bring to the table, but similar size. Kameron Taylor's really, really skinny and lengthy, 185 at 6'7", but 19 points a game. And that could be a versatile pickup for West Virginia, because I think one of the things they're targeting, the Ross Hodge way, is defense and length and athleticism and guys that can disrupt and make plays, on both sides of the court. And this seems to be a guy that can do that. So that would be another top target for me. Again, with all of these things in consideration, and I think I already said it in the episode dedicated to him, Muhammad Silla, man, he's a guy that looks to be coming to Morgantown. Hopefully, things can change. The portal giveth and taketh away, and the portal can surprise you. So that might not happen. But if you get him, we already know what's coming with Miles Sadler. There's lots of potential and promise in the portal and lots of guys to choose from. And if we had 5 hours of episodes where, of an episode right now, we could talk about a lot more guys, but we're not going to. But we'll keep you posted, man, when things are breaking and guys are committing or going on visits, and what I think about them, I'll have you covered here in Mountaineer Moment. But again, this is episode 184. 3 names to watch for as the Mountaineers might just target them. We know at least one of them's coming for a visit in Javan Buchanan, but Jason Edwards of Providence, Buchanan of Boise State, and Kameron Taylor of UNC Asheville, some potential pickups for the Mountaineers that could be difference makers and help the Mountaineers get over the hump in year 2 under Ross Hodge coming up in 26-27. But we'll see you next time for episode 184 of Mountaineer Moment. My name's Troy, and let's go Mountaineers.